The throne room of the Zyrathian Empire was a place of awe and fear. Its towering crystalline pillars reflected the glow of 1,000 suspended light orbs, each one pulsing with the rhythmic hum of the Empire's living core. Beneath that impossible ceiling sat the alien queen, robed in silk spun from bioluminescent threads, her crown gleaming with the weight of centuries. To her subjects, she was not merely sovereign. She was mother of the Empire, keeper of their legacy, an embodiment of their pride. But today, her pride trembled on the edge of ruin. The queen's daughters, 3 princesses, each one destined to inherit a shard of her power, had vanished. The disappearance was unthinkable. The palace was a fortress, guarded by legions of soldiers, walls lined with living stone beasts bred to detect even a whisper of intrusion. The princesses were never left unguarded. And yet, sometime between morning prayers and the midday council, the nursery stood empty. The guardians who swore their lives to the heirs lay unconscious on the ground, their weapons untouched, their armor unbroken. No trace of struggle, no sign of infiltration, only silence, and the absence that screamed louder than any alarm. The queen's voice shattered that silence. "Find them," she hissed. Her words carried enough venom to make hardened generals flinch. "Scour every corridor, every chamber, every shadow. Until my daughters are returned, no one rests." The order was redundant. Panic had already spread like wildfire. Squadrons of guards fanned out across the palace. Hounds sniffed every passage, and courtiers whispered among themselves in fearful tones. Who would dare strike at the heart of the Empire by touching the royal bloodline? Was an enemy species bold enough to risk extinction by provoking Zyrathian wrath? Or was it treachery from within, a coup masked as a kidnapping? The court's suspicion fell quickly, predictably on the humans. They had been admitted to Zyrathian space reluctantly, after years of border skirmishes and uneasy truces. Though hardy and inventive, humans were considered primitive, newcomers to the interstellar stage, tolerated only because of their stubborn refusal to be broken. To most Zyrathians, humans were animals that had learned to speak and build ships, but not much more. The queen had allowed a handful of them to serve in lowly positions within her palace as a gesture of diplomatic courtesy, though her advisors warned it was an insult to have such creatures breathing the same air as royalty. Now, with the princesses gone, suspicion sharpened into rage. "It is them," spat General Score, his armored tail lashing against the crystalline floor. "The humans seek leverage. They could not hope to challenge us in battle. So they strike at our heart. Give the order, Majesty. Let us burn their colonies to ash before they dare demand ransom." The chamber echoed with agreement from the nobles, their voices weaving a chorus of bloodlust. To them, the idea fit perfectly. Humans were cunning. Humans were desperate. Humans were dangerous in their weakness. But the queen did not give the order. Not yet. She sat upon her throne, her claws digging into the armrests, her eyes smoldering with more than anger. It was fear, for all her empire's power, for all her warriors and fleets. None of it mattered if her daughters were gone. The empire could survive 1,000 wars, but not the breaking of its bloodline. Her daughters were not just children. They were symbols. They were continuity. They were hope. The queen rose to her feet, silencing the chamber with the motion alone. Her voice carried across the room, steady but sharp as glass. "If the humans are guilty," she said, "they will not suffer war. They will suffer erasure. Their name will be spoken only as a warning, their worlds ground to dust, their very existence a lesson to the galaxy. But we will not act until we know. Find my daughters. Alive." The search expanded beyond the palace, spilling into the capital city itself. Patrol ships scanned the skies, checkpoints rose across every avenue, and panic spread among the citizens as rumors outpaced truth. Some whispered that the princesses had been assassinated. Others believed they had been taken by gods or spirits, punishment for the empire's arrogance. Hours passed. The queen grew more restless, her fury boiling into barely restrained violence. Servants trembled at her gaze. Generals barked contradictory orders in their desperation. Hope dimmed, and then a palace guard, breathless and pale, fell to his knees before the throne. Majesty, he gasped. We found them. The queen's heart lurched, her composure cracking for the briefest instant. Alive? The guard swallowed hard. Yes, Majesty. Alive. But you must see for yourself. Moments later, the queen stormed to the corridors, her honor guard struggling to match her pace. Each step felt like a battle drum in her chest. She did not dare imagine what she would find, whether her daughters would be broken, frightened, scarred, whether she would see betrayal etched into their eyes. The guard led her not to a hidden passage, nor a secret chamber, nor some enemy lair uncovered within her palace. Instead, they stopped at a place so absurd, so inconceivable, that the queen could only stare in disbelief. A soldier's barracks. The door slid open, and there they were, her daughters, her precious heirs, curled up like hatchlings in a nest, their jeweled robes discarded, their crowns askew. They slept soundly, breath steady and untroubled, their small forms pressed close together, not upon silken beds or beneath layers of protective wards, but upon the chest of a human soldier. The sight was surreal. The soldier lay sprawled on his bunk, armor discarded, chest rising and falling in the rhythm of deep sleep. One arm was draped protectively around the nearest princess, while the others nestled against him as if he were the safest place in the universe. Their faces were serene, their claws lightly gripping the fabric of his uniform. The alien queen, ruler of empires, scourge of galaxies, could not move. Her daughters had vanished from the most secure palace in the cosmos. They had not been taken by assassins or spirits. They had not been spirited away by enemies or betrayed by allies. They had simply crawled into the arms of a human and found peace. The chamber filled with stunned silence. Guards exchanged uncertain glances. Nobles who had followed at a distance whispered in confusion, and even the ever-arrogant General Score stood dumbstruck. The queen's rage trembled within her, desperate for release. She wanted to roar, to strike, to demand answers, but all she could do was stare at the impossible tableau before her. Her daughters, the very future of her empire, had chosen the chest of a human soldier over the safety of her entire palace. The silence broke with a soft sound, the youngest princess stirring in her sleep, murmuring something in a language only children and mothers understood. Her claw clutched tighter at the human's tunic, as if even in dreams she refused to let go. And for the first time in years, the alien queen felt powerless. The alien queen had stood frozen at the threshold of the human soldier's barracks, fury locked in a fragile stalemate with disbelief. Her daughters, the heirs of her empire, remained fast asleep on the chest of the man whose kind she had barely tolerated within her court. The guards whispered nervously, waiting for her command. The nobles clutched their robes, scandal and horror carved into their features. Some expected an execution on the spot, a dismemberment to cleanse this insult to Zyrathian honor. But no order came. The queen's eyes stayed fixed on the human. Who was he? To the nobles, he was no one, a lowly soldier from a backwater planet. To the queen, until this moment, he had been invisible, just another conscript assigned by her advisors as part of the cultural exchange agreement forced upon her by galactic diplomacy. He guarded gates, patrolled corridors, stood in silence at ceremonies. Forgettable. And yet her daughters had chosen him. When the princesses finally stirred awake, their mother's shadow falling over the bunk, they blinked groggily. For a moment, the queen thought they would spring up in fear, ashamed to be caught in such a state. Instead, they burrowed deeper into the soldier's arms, as though he alone could shield them even from her wrath. The human blinked awake at last, his instincts sharp even from slumber, his eyes, small, unremarkable to Zyrathian standards, focused immediately on the princesses before flicking up to the queen. He did not lurch in panic. He did not scramble to his knees. He merely adjusted his posture, lowering his arm to make sure the youngest did not slide off his chest, and then offered a nod of recognition. "Your Majesty," he said simply. The audacity of it left the room breathless. No elaborate dress, no groveling plea, just calm acknowledgement, as though he were greeting an equal. The queen's voice was cold enough to frost the air. "Explain." The soldier did not falter. His voice was steady, low, unthreatening. "They come here sometimes," he said. At first, I thought they were curious. I let them stay. Tonight, they must have slipped away again. They fell asleep. Gasps rippled through the nobles. The princesses sneaking into a soldier's barracks? And a human's, no less? Unthinkable. The queen's talons curled against her palms. You presume to tell me my daughters choose your presence willingly? He met her gaze without arrogance, only quiet certainty. Yes. The eldest princess lifted her head then, her jeweled crown hanging askew. Mother, she whispered in her own tongue, he is kind. He listens. He sings. The queen stiffened. Her daughters had never spoken with such softness of anyone in the palace. They were heirs, treated with reverence and distance, their every move scrutinized. They were bowed to, worshipped, obeyed. But they were never simply children. Her gaze returned to the human. His name was Ericale. A soldier, yes, but not a remarkable one by Zyrathian standards. Records showed he had been transferred after a border skirmish, one of the few survivors of a brutal outpost siege. His commendation cited stubbornness, not brilliance. He had simply refused to die when others did. Yet in his quarters, the queen noticed details that unsettled her. A blanket, frayed but meticulously folded at the edge of his bunk. A holograph, flickering faintly, of a small blue-green planet, Earth. A battered stringed instrument, clearly repaired by hand more than once. These were not the trophies of a warrior. They were fragments of someone who carried his world with him, even when far from it. The youngest princess tugged at the queen's arm, her small voice breaking into the silence. Mother, may we stay? The queen's chest tightened. Her daughters clung to human not with fear, but with trust. Perhaps more trust than they had ever shown their own people. But trust was dangerous. The court would see weakness. The generals would see scandal. If word spread that the royal heirs sought comfort in the arms of a human, her empire's enemies would pounce on the chance to mock Zyrathian pride. Even allies would question her control. Her claws scraped against the crystalline doorframe. "Why do you allow this?" she demanded. Eric's expression softened, though his voice remained level. "Because they're children. They wanted company. I didn't see harm in it." The queen bristled. Children, to her. They were heirs, the future of her bloodline, the symbol of her empire. But the word lingered, foreign yet resonant. He had not seen them as vessels of power, as political tools, as fragile symbols to be guarded behind 1,000 walls. He had seen them as children. The princesses looked up at him then, their eyes wide with the unguarded honesty only the young possessed. "He tells stories," one added, "of oceans, of skies, of running barefoot." The queen's breath caught. Her daughters had never even walked unguarded in a meadow, let alone felt the sand of beach or the freedom of an open sky. Their lives were carved into protocol, their every movement weighed with consequence. And yet here, in this plain soldier's barracks, they looked more alive than she had ever seen them. The nobles hissed their outrage. General Score finally stepped forward, spitting venom. "Majesty, this is a stain upon our honor. A human has ensnared the heirs. This is manipulation, deceit." "Enough!" The queen's command silenced him instantly. Her eyes never left Eric. She could kill him now and wash the scandal away with his blood. Or she could drag her daughters back and lock them within the palace walls, burying the shame beneath layers of duty. And yet, her daughters pressed closer to him, their claws clinging to his tunic as if he were an anchor in a storm. The queen, conqueror of worlds, felt an unfamiliar crack in her certainty. Perhaps the greatest danger here was not the human's presence. Perhaps it was what he revealed, that in all her empire's might, no one else had given her daughters the one thing they had found with him: peace. The alien queen had waged wars across star systems, commanded fleets that blotted out suns, and bent entire species to her will. She had faced assassins, usurpers, traitors, and invaders. Yet nothing unsettled her like the sight before her now. Her daughters, her blood, her legacy, clung stubbornly to human soldier, refusing to release him even as her shadow towered over them. Their jeweled eyes shimmered with defiance, not fear. The eldest, with a crown tilted awkwardly over one horn, pressed herself tighter into his side, as though daring her mother to tear them apart. For the first time in decades, the queen hesitated. Her guards shifted uneasily behind her. The nobles, ever eager to pounce on scandal, whispered feverishly among themselves. General Scorus Armatail thrashed against the floor, the sound like a drumbeat demanding blood. "Majesty," he growled, "your hesitation shames us. This human manipulates the heirs, corrupts them with primitive tricks. Permit me to end him." The queen's gaze snapped to him, a spark of danger in her eyes. "Touch him, and I will end you." The general recoiled, stunned. The nobles fell silent, shock etched into their faces. To protect a human against their own general? It was unthinkable. Yet she meant it. The words had risen from her throat like a blade unsheathed, instinctive and undeniable. Her daughters whimpered softly as the tension in the room thickened. The human, Eric, tightened his arms slightly around the youngest princess, his expression unreadable. He did not boast, he did not plead. He simply sat there, steady as stone, letting the children's trust speak for him. The queen's claws curled against her palm. She could not kill him here, not with her daughters watching. To do so would be to rip trust from their hearts, to teach them that love and safety were illusions. And yet, to allow him to live was to invite chaos into her empire. She turned her gaze on him. "What spell have you cast on them?" "No spell," Eric replied evenly. His voice carried no fear, only quiet truth. "I treated them as children, not as heirs. That's all." The simplicity of it cut deeper than any blade. Children. He spoke the word so easily, as if it were obvious, as if it were natural. But to the queen, her daughters had never been children. From birth, they were princesses, heirs, symbols. Every smile was studied, every word rehearsed, every step measured. Their lives were ceremonies and duties, never games or laughter. And yet here, curled against a human's chest, they had found what her palace, her empire, her entire civilization had failed to give them. Her pride warred with her instincts. She wanted to deny it, to call it a trick, to claim her daughters were bewitched. But deep down, she knew the truth. Children did not fake such peace. The youngest stirred and blinked up at her mother. "He tells us stories," she murmured sleepily, "and he does not bow." The queen's heart clenched. For Zyrathians, bowing was ritual, a sign of reverence. But to her daughters, it had become a barrier. Everyone bowed to them, guards, servants, nobles. Everyone treated them as icons. No one treated them as themselves. No one except this human. The queen straightened, her towering form casting long shadows across the barracks. Her voice rang sharp as crystal. "Leave us." The guards exchanged glances, hesitant. "Majesty." "Leave us." Reluctantly, they obeyed, ushering the nobles and the general from the chamber. Soon, only the queen, her daughters, and Eric remained. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the slow rhythm of 3 pairs of small lungs rising and falling. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You do not fear me." Eric met her gaze. "Should I?" The question startled her. She was the most feared being in half the galaxy. Yet he asked her if he should fear. There was no arrogance in his tone, only a calm honesty that unsettled her more than groveling ever could. "You risk death by presuming to touch what is mine," she hissed. His voice softened, but did not waver. "They are not things to be owned, Majesty. They are children who needed comfort. That's all I gave them." Her jaw tightened, fury warring with something deeper. He spoke as though he knew her daughters better than she did, as though he saw them more clearly than their own mother. And the worst part was, he did. The eldest princess finally stirred, lifting her chin. "Mother, do not take him away. With him we feel safe." The queen felt her composure fracture. Safe. Her daughters lived in the most fortified palace in the galaxy, surrounded by guards and protected by walls that could withstand planetary bombardment. Yet they felt safe only in the arms of a single human soldier. The political consequences whirled through her mind. If the court learned of this attachment, they would call it weakness. Enemies would mock the empire's heirs for clinging to an alien. Generals would whisper corruption, perhaps even plot rebellion under the guise of protecting tradition. And yet, if she tore her daughters away, she would shatter something far more precious than politics. For the first time in her reign, the queen found herself standing on ground she did not know how to defend. She studied Eric again. He did not gloat, did not smile triumphantly at his hold over her daughters. He simply sat there, a soldier with weary eyes, holding children who trusted him. No ambition, no scheme, no manipulation. Just a man who had given them what the galaxy had denied. A choice lay before her. If she executed him, she would protect her throne, but scar her daughters forever. If she allowed him to live, she would protect their hearts, but risk her empire's stability. The weight of it pressed down on her like a collapsing star. She, who had conquered galaxies, was undone not by fleets or armies, but by a single human and 3 sleeping children. Her claws flexed at her sides. At last, she spoke, her voice low and measured. You will not leave their side. Not until I decide what to do with you. Eric gave a single nod. No protest, no triumph. Just acceptance. The queen turned away, her silks whispering against the floor as she strode toward the door. Before leaving, she cast one final glance at the strange tableau. Her daughters nestled against the human, his arm protectively curved around them, their breasts steady and untroubled. For the first time, she wondered if the future of her empire might not rest in power, but in something far rarer, something as fragile and as strong as trust. The days following the discovery were unlike any the palace had known. Whispers rippled through the crystalline halls, murmurs that turned into rumors, rumors that turned into sharp-edged gossip. The alien queen's daughters, the future of the Zyrathian Empire, had been found curled up on the chest of a human soldier. No one dared speak of it in her presence, but the story spread faster than wildfire through the court and the capital alike. Nobles clenched their jaws in outrage. Generals hissed of dishonor. Advisors warned of destabilization, scandal, and insurrection. And yet, the queen did not act as they expected. The human, Eric Kale, was not executed. He was not imprisoned, nor exiled, nor publicly humiliated. Instead, he was quietly reassigned, at the queen's personal order, to serve as the official guardian of her daughters. The uproar was immediate. This is madness, spat General Score in a council meeting, his armored tail smashing the floor with a crack. To entrust the heirs to a human, a primitive outsider, shames us before the galaxy. Our enemies will laugh until their lungs burst. The queen sat upon her throne, unblinking. And yet, my daughters laugh only when they are with him. Tell me, General, have you brought them peace? The chamber fell silent. None dared answer. Still, resistance seethed beneath the surface. Nobles gathered in shadowed alcoves, hissing conspiracies. Some demanded the human be framed for treason, others that he be quietly assassinated. To them, his very existence was a stain on Zyrathian dignity. But each time a plan was whispered, it faltered, for the princesses clung to Eric wherever he went. If he walked the gardens, they trailed behind him. If he sat in the barracks, they curled against him. At night, they refused to sleep unless he was near. Any harm to him would unleash the wrath of the heirs themselves. And no noble dared risk the queen's daughters turning against their own people. The empire watched, uneasy. And slowly, something shifted. The court had expected the human to gloat, to wield his newfound influence like a blade. But Eric did none of that. He spoke little in councils, his voice quiet when addressed. He carried no arrogance, no ambition. His days were spent telling stories to princesses, teaching them simple games, showing them small pieces of human culture, songs, drawings, even the art of folding scraps of parchment into delicate shapes. The princesses adored it. Their laughter filled the palace halls for the first time in years. Servants whispered that the air itself felt lighter when the human walked by. Guards, once scornful, began to nod respectfully as he passed. Even the stiffest nobles found themselves silenced when the heirs themselves publicly defended him. The queen watched all of this with a mix of unease and reluctant fascination. She observed him in secret moments. How he carried himself not like a conqueror, but like a caretaker. How his patience never faltered even when the children grew unruly. She saw how he refused to use the princess's affection for personal gain, never once requesting privilege or wealth. And she began to wonder, what kind of power was this that required no throne, no army, no decree, yet bound her daughters more surely than duty ever had? One night, unable to restrain her curiosity, the queen confronted him privately in the gardens. "You do not understand what you have done," she said, her voice low but edged with warning. "My court whispers a betrayal. They see your presence as weakness. They believe you poison my daughters against their own kind." Eric bowed his head, not deeply, not like a subject, but in simple acknowledgement. "I don't want their throne. I only want them to grow up knowing they are more than crowns." The queen's breath caught. The words pierced through the armor of her pride. For years she had guarded her daughters with walls, guards, and ceremony, believing she was protecting them. Yet in doing so, she had caged them. And this human, this unremarkable soldier, had given them freedom, even if only in stolen moments. The queen studied him in silence, the weight of her empire pressing on her shoulders. At last, she asked, "Why do you care for them? They are not of your kind." Eric's gaze did not waver. "Because they're children, and children deserve to be loved." The simplicity of it stunned her. No political angle, no hidden agenda. Just a truth so raw it felt alien in her world of power and deceit. The queen turned away, her silks whispering against the grass. She could not admit it aloud, not yet, not even to herself. But in that moment, she understood this human's presence was not weakness. It was strength of another kind. Weeks turned to months. The empire, though restless, did not collapse. Whispers of scandal dulled into murmurs of curiosity. Some nobles began to reconsider their disdain. If the heirs loved the human, perhaps there was merit in his people after all. And beyond the palace, among the common Zyrathians, stories spread of the human guardian who made the princesses laugh. To the citizens, it became a symbol of hope, a sign that perhaps their rulers were not untouchable deities, but beings with hearts. The shift was subtle but undeniable. Humans, once dismissed as primitives, began to be viewed with cautious respect. Trade deals opened. Diplomatic gestures softened. Soldiers who once mocked human recruits now trained beside them without scorn. The queen never spoke of it publicly, but she watched her daughters bloom in ways she had never imagined possible. They ran in gardens instead of sitting endlessly on thrones. They spoke their minds more boldly in councils. They laughed, they played, they dreamed. And at the center of it all was a human soldier, steady and unassuming, who asked for nothing in return. The queen stood on her balcony one evening, gazing across her capital as twin moons rose above the horizon. Her daughters played in the courtyard below, chasing each other's laughter, while Eric sat nearby, carving small shapes from wood. For the first time in her long reign, she felt something shift inside her, a realization as heavy as it was liberating. Power was not only in fleets and crowns. Power was in trust, in kindness, in the quiet strength that made children feel safe enough to sleep. Her daughters had not simply found comfort on the chest of a human soldier. They had found the bridge between two civilizations. And perhaps, the queen thought as she watched them, the future of her empire would not be written in conquest, but in compassion.